First of all, I would say, I hate to argue with you, but you're wrong. You are worth it. And no matter what you've done, whatever bad you think you've done or whatever trouble you're in or how irredeemable you are, it's just not true.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you may or may not know, this is the show where I get the privilege to have weekly conversations with the best and brightest, what I call entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry, as we come together, hopefully, through these conversations to try to leave the world a little bit better than we found it, or than it found us. Today, I'm super excited, really grateful. It's kind of a local friend / through mutual friends kind of opportunity for us to spend some time together, connect today. Jason Varughese, who's the founder and CEO of Pink Cloud. And we've got a lot we're going to talk about, and this is going to be super inspirational, informative, and just generally enjoyable for all of us, especially me. I'm going to just say that up front. Let me tell you a little bit about Jason before we welcome him into the show. Jason's navigated the high-stakes world of finance and software technology early in his career and throughout his career. He's decoded complex systems at Stanford. And frankly, he's built everything from organic farming tech to luxury beauty platforms. But really, his most impressive build isn't a line of code per se. It's a life defined by grit, authenticity, and the courage to reclaim the pink cloud. Like many of us, Jason's life has been anything but linear and up and to the right, as we'd say in the tech industry, right? Yet he clearly hasn't let his hardest moments or struggles define him. In fact, he's not only found the grounding to heal and strengthen himself, but he's taken that determination and he's married it to his existing technical skills as a software developer and a product leader. And he's really committed his career to building better systems and communities for those who are traveling addiction paths similar to his own past experiences. Today, he's the founder and CEO of a digital sanctuary for recovery, proving that your hardest experiences aren't just your past, they're frankly your superpower. His tools are downloaded by hundreds of thousands of people in more than 100 countries, and he's applying his technical and business savvy to one of the most human of problems. So let's welcome the man who's bridging the gap between modern day technology and the human spirit, my friend Jason Varughese. Jason, welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. It's great to have you, buddy.
Thanks, Rob, and thank you so much for that gracious, wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. It's really wonderful to be on your show, and I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you so much it was very, very, very kind and generous of you. Thank you.
My pleasure. And I always say there is something very joyful if we allow ourselves to experience it about simply sitting back and hearing someone else describe us, essentially us as we are. And that is absolutely what that introduction was. It is my description, my interpretation of you and how I see you and experience you here in the world in Los Angeles that we traverse through a lot of mutual friends. So I'm grateful for the conversation. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to open up some doors that people probably aren't used to opening up. But that's going to be super important and helpful to everybody that's going to listen. But I want to open up with kind of a baseline question that was the first thing that came to mind when I sat down to prepare myself for this conversation, which is, what is de-addiction?
So, de-addiction is a term that I only recently heard because I was posting on LinkedIn about having the wonderful opportunity with one of our mutual friends who's a long-term advisors of our David J. Whelan. Dave Whelan's been an advisor of Pink Cloud since before we went live in 2016. So Dave got me an invitation to a local Los Angeles event where it's the opening of the Indian consulate. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity and experience to be there for the opening of the official opening event of the local consulate of India. And when I was posting, I posted on LinkedIn about it. And one of the people that commented on my post is not someone I've ever met, but she was she's in India, and she made a comment about, instead of calling Pink Cloud the marketplace for the addiction ecosystem, say de-addiction, right? And it just made so much sense to
Okay.
me. I was like, whoa, right? Like, because I when I read her like suggestion, I thought to myself, and I posted back comment thanking her, and I immediately updated our stuff to say de-addiction,
Okay.
because otherwise one could make the faulty assumption that here we are, a Los Angeles-based California tech company that's creating software to help the supply side folks.
We don't want that misinterpretation.
Right. Well, so de-addiction is just, I think, meant to imply we're trying to help people that have been impacted by addiction get to the other side of it, or start thinking about getting to the other side of it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to help on the demand side of the problem. Yeah.
All right. No, I love that. And I also love first of all, like, kudos to that woman for commenting, right? And then compliments to you for taking a random social comment and actually like absorbing it and thinking about it, because, you know, I obviously I'm in the business of words, right? In podcasting. And so words matter, right? I
Right.
mean, like, words really do matter in how we tell our stories and how people accept and interpret our stories. Let's talk about this.
Although I will say,
ahead.
Rob, on this topic, after the introduction, I recall you said sanctuary. We might consider adding that somehow, but well, we can give that as the young people call it, a think.
Right. There we go. Yes. I love that. Happy to contribute if that's the case. So let's talk about this. We're going to get into your personal story in a minute, but before we do, let's talk about what probably before that post and that change in wordsmiths, you might have called the addiction industry, or I might have called the addiction industry. Now, for today's framework, we're going to refer to it as the de-addiction industry. Talk to me about that. Like, what is it, or was it, about the de-addiction industry as a whole, not just in your personal case, which we'll get to, but as a whole? Like, what is it about the de-addiction industry that is kind of broken, right, so to speak, that needs to be, or that you thought needed to be delivered differently or better?
Right. So my sobriety date is February 23rd, 2015. And when I was getting sober originally on February 23rd, 2015, that was a time in history when there was not an easy way to find 12-step meetings where
Okay.
I was living. I had just recently moved to Los Angeles about 3 months prior to that, and I'd been in the San Francisco, Silicon Valley area for the 18 years prior to that. And I was new to Los Angeles, and I was finally ready, willing, and surrendering, and going. I ended up going to 110 AA meetings in my first 90 days. That's
Wow.
how I got sober. But during that first couple of days, there's something called a meeting after a meeting, where you're outside of a meeting. And back then I was still a cigarette smoker. So I was smoking cigarettes and talking to guys from the meeting that I had attended. And people would say, "Oh, why don't you go to this meeting? It's on the Boulevard." And I was like, I don't know. I figured out quickly.
Like, I'm not from here.
Boulevard. Yeah, I wasn't from here. And they were like, "You should check out this one meeting in West Hollywood, this other meeting in North Hollywood." This was all happening in Encino, where I was getting sober.
And basically just super informal human refer, in casual conversation, like, "Hey,
Casual.
I've got my favorite one. Hey, these guys might fit you." Like, but no kind of like, "Oh, and then I can go and look that up," or.
Right. And so I was coming off of 4-day very, very, very bad bender. It had started on Thursday night drinking in Calabasas and ended up in Costa Mesa. Okay. And then I ended up somehow back in Encino. So I was hungover, kind of disoriented, like dry heaving, coughing. I wasn't in good shape physically. I had holes in my shoes, 20-something cavities, I found out later, wearing stolen clothes. And then I'm smoking cigarettes after a meeting, and people are rapid fire giving me like these suggestions. And they're like, "It's on this corner. It's in this West Hollywood, North Hollywood." And I was like, I didn't know there was more than one Hollywood. I didn't, right? Because I wasn't from LA. And I was like, I was like, I can't believe these LA people are calling the northern part of Hollywood, North Hollywood, like it's a different town. And I was going home and I was like, I had nothing to do. I'd just been fired from my head of product at a data science startup job. And I was like, wait, North Hollywood, West Hollywood. And then I was trying to look up where the meetings might be that they'd been suggesting.
Yeah.
And there was nothing. There was no easy way of doing it. And at the time, there were 8 different websites supporting LA County with meeting times and locations.
Okay.
And so I quickly called AA headquarters in New York City on like day 5 of being sober. And I said that my hypothesis was that there was not a central database of AA meetings. And they passed me around to someone that I could speak with that was very high up at the organization in New York City, and he verified that I was accurate. And the reason for that was that in the 90s, this conversation was happening in 2015, but in the
Yeah, yeah.
90s, the person told me that what happened is their outside counsel, their outside lawyers advised them not to make a central database of AA meetings because they were fearful of being sued for disinclusion, because legally every AA
Interesting.
meeting is an independent entity legally. And
Wow.
so they were worried if they made a central database of AA meetings in the 90s, they could get sued by people whose meetings were, for whatever reason, not.
Right.
So there's a kind of
Wow.
legal advice.
25
Yeah.
years later, you're basically like living the problem of one kind of overly protective legal strategy from
Right.
that. Wow.
And you know, to be fair though, to the outside counsel for AA in the 90s, it gave them that advice, being in Silicon Valley in the late 90s and like for 14 years after that, when the internet was first hitting, the attorneys that were trying to navigate like and create new laws, they were doing the best they could. And
course.
it sounds actually like a reasonable thing to be fearful
Yep.
of, because we are, and lawsuit risk is a real thing, and they're a
Yep.
nonprofit and whatnot. But
But
and
you're
then
living, I mean, literally, first of
yeah,
all, physically, you're going through like your big commitment, your surrender. You're like, I am literally in the first hours of
yeah,
recovery.
yeah.
And yet the product guy part of your brain is still functioning clearly enough to be like, wait a minute, there's some missing pieces of this puzzle.
It's funny that, so I've thought about it in the years since, right? Because I literally wrote down bullet points of like a mini, a PRD, a product requirements document. I had all these feature ideas written down, but I had holes in my shoes. I was wearing stolen clothes that didn't fit, my mouth hurt so bad because I'd be falling asleep after drinking. I had over 20 something cavities. I mean, I was not functioning as a human at all, but the coding and product work, I'd started coding in elementary school. My first paid job
So
offer was in 8th grade.
this is in your DNA. This isn't like a job.
Yeah, so software engineering as a practice preceded drinking and using, because I started drinking and using at 14. So everything before that, my software engineering background was still there because it started before. So anyways, that might be why I took comfort in like working on what became Pink Cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the classic. I say this not all the time on the show, but I say it often enough, and I've said it a million times over the course of my entrepreneurial mentory life, right? Like that's the classic entrepreneur solving your own problem kind of story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Pink Cloud. Sure. Oh, and we're going to talk a ton about Pink Cloud in more detail, but like the root origin story part of it that you just shared is like that classic. I was like, I mean, you were like, I was standing on the back of a church parking lot, kind of metaphorically and literally trying to begin to solve my own problem. And little did I think of in that moment that it could be a problem I could solve for the hundreds of thousands or millions of people worldwide. But already your problem solver brain had that instinctive intuition that says like, wait a minute, if this is a problem for me, it's probably a problem for other people.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I was just fortunate, right? Because I had a lot of on-the-job training in Silicon Valley and Dallas, Texas, also for internships, and Silver Spring, Maryland for another internship I had. I'd had just so much of. I don't want to say, I don't want to be too patriotic, right? But in our country, there's probably not two better places to learn software engineering than Silicon Valley and Dallas, Texas, for a lot of reasons, right? In terms of like the history of software, right? But so I was just right place, right time, and so I had all that training, and so when I was getting sober, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I was like, it was just so easy for me at that point because I was 36, about to turn 37, and I've been doing it for so long. I was like, oh, okay, these are some of the problems, but of course I took a direct to consumer approach. So I was thinking about the end user, the person that was struggling to find meetings, right? Because I was like, I can't believe this. I'm sick. I'm not well. I'm trying to do the right thing. These guys were giving me tips. And like, I wanted to go to more meetings, but it was just so hard to find them. And so I just put that kind of part, but I was just very fortunate that I'd had all that on the job training in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
I
Yeah.
love that.
So,
And I have kind of a like slightly related question to that point, but it's more, maybe a bit more about your, not your journey per se, but like what you've now seen over the years during your sobriety and in the years when you weren't sober, like working in Silicon Valley, like it's a very particular thing, right? Or just the technology industry as a whole, no matter where it is geographically in the US. Like there's a very particular set of stressors and set of expectations and pressures culturally
yeah.
that kind of are
Yes.
part of that industry. So I'm curious, like, again, with both sides, with both lenses, like you struggled with addiction problems while you were in the industry, and then you have now used the industry and you have been able to see and help hundreds of thousands of other people. So you have a particular lens that you can absorb other people's experiences. I recently on a recent episode with a woman here in Los Angeles, Lynette Esther, we were talking about this idea of like hustle culture and how hustle culture is literally killing us, right?
Yes.
And so I'm curious. So let like that's what I want to pull apart. Like
Sure.
in your unique experience, I'm not saying hustle culture drove you to your addictions, but like, have you seen that culture is like a huge contributor to our overall addictive behaviors and choices that we make in American culture now?
I think absolutely 100%. Like we have some problems in our culture when it comes to work life balance, right? And am I guilty? Well, I started coding in elementary school and I got my first paid job offer in 8th grade. I happen to like what I do, right? I love it, right? I mean, I love it. So for me, it's a little bit different because sometimes like some of my I've been called a workaholic before, but then it's like, come on, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder, and I love what I'm doing. I wake up happy every day that I have the opportunity to do this. And by the way, doctors and in finance, they don't take days off. You have to work on nights, weekends, and holidays, right? That's the job, right? This is a healthcare technology company, so I don't mind it. But yes, I think for most people, what has happened to our country, probably, I don't know like which decade it started, but because of technology, I think technology is a big driver of this problem we have with hustle culture. Is used to be, because I'm 47, about to turn 48. I remember the days when you had to send faxes, you had to put something in the mail, or you had to burn CDs with your code on it and send that to your customers, or put them on something called floppy disks and mail them. So you just had to wait sometimes for things and to do things, right? Once in a while, you had to wait. But then what happened with technology is it created infrastructure for all of us to be connected 24/7, 365 days a year. And then I think that gave managers and bosses and owners of businesses the tools to potentially misuse, abuse, and manipulate workers into working more. And I think I think that hustle culture fundamentally is trying to make it seem like such a great, cool thing that you're always hustling, this, that, and the other, when like in reality, Probably, and I've had friends tell me this, like, like early on in Pink Cloud when I would run experiments where I would be like, can I work 20 hours out of 24 without taking breaks? Can I just take like ginger shots to keep my immunity up? Little things like that I would just do, right? And like my buddies would be like, dude, if you would at least like cap your coding to 60 hours a week, right? Like your code would improve, little things like that, right? But I will say that I think that this notion that we're all just hustlers and like we got to hustle, we would find, and I think they've done studies on this probably, that if we would rest more, treat ourselves better, get out into community and like just walk outside and like be outside where the trees are and we're getting more oxygen, just doing something like for ourselves, like self-care, we would be probably more productive. But the challenge is that it wouldn't be easy ROI for executives and management
right, to measure.
So
then we wind up in these circles where then we self-medicate, right? And
absolutely.
then this is what I do to relax. And
right.
I'm gonna share a little anecdote, and I'm gonna frame this up to be ultimately respectful. Like, by no means what I'm about to share from my own life journey is comparable to yours. Like, literally by no means. I am someone who very much.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Shore Capital. In today's venture capital world, it's not just about cash. It's about relationships. Capital is harder to find. Limited investors have fewer managers that they can trust. And the industry is just filled with far too much hype. Shore Capital is an early stage venture fund investing in the world's most ruthlessly iterative founders, helping its limited partners to find founders who are solving the world's most dynamic problems, teams that excel in mastering the idea maze, teams moving with a rapid iterative velocity and demonstrating radical resourcefulness. Shore Capital doesn't just write checks though. They become fractional co-founders when needed, offering strategic support, high leverage relationship development, and a deep commitment to the long-term success of their portfolio companies. If you are a ruthlessly iterative founder with a bold vision or a limited investor seeking sustained access to the brightest big thinkers of our time, Shore Capital wants to meet you. So visit shorecapital.notion.site to learn more.
Accidentally, serendipitously, kind of almost casually 6 years ago, now next month, 6 years ago, the end of this month, decided to stop drinking.
Nice.
But not like you and I are not in the same bucket. Like, and I'm saying that out of respect for you. Like, your journey has been like, mine has been like this very, again, just almost happenstance kind of, it was the beginning of the pandemic. It was April of the pandemic. And when everybody else in the world during the pandemic was like more easily choosing to drink more, I literally said to myself one day after sitting in my confined space of like social lockdown, I literally was like, I had like a cheap bottle of wine the night before, which was like a very like Tuesday thing to do, watching a ball game or something on TV. And I just like kind of didn't I was like early 50s. So I was kind of like, I'm getting old. Like I didn't really feel like great the next morning when I woke up. And so I literally tricked my mind into saying, this is perfect. If there was ever a time for me to just like take a month off drinking, it'll be now, because there literally will be no social pressures or cues from anybody around me, because I'm literally not even like I'm socially distanced and standing in line when I'm going to the Ralph's grocery store. So like this is perfect. Like I'll just take 30 days off to just feel a little bit better. And then next thing I knew, as we know here in Los Angeles, the lockdowns were pretty intensive and committed, which is great and saved lots of lives. But literally like I woke up like 6 months later in November or whatever, and I was like, oh shit, I haven't had a drink of any alcohol. Like and I tell that story only to tell this part of it, which is what I realized as just a normal middle American, like middle-aged guy born in 1968, grew up in Chicago, went to school in Arizona, lived in Los Angeles for 28 years, like normal working professional in the tech industry. What I realized was that like, since I was 17, basically alcohol had just become an extra character in my life. right? And it was like, so like as in the play or the art, the book or the movie of my life, like alcohol was just a character that was along for the ride with me. And what I realized was like, as I looked back on this myself, that November, December, January, and then I was kind of like, okay, wait a minute. I don't need this character in my life anymore. And this is why I say, like, this is very much like the serendip, like very kind of nonchalant way to wind up in this better place for myself physically and emotionally. But like, I realized as you're talking, it's like, I'm hearing myself and I'm going like, yeah, cause there would be I'd be on a road trip on Friday night, and then you'd use the excuses like, oh, it's Friday. I was just on a road trip. And so I'm exhausted. So I'm going to have a couple of drinks at the airport while I'm waiting for my flight. And then I'm going to have a drink on the flight because it's Friday. And then you come home and it's Saturday. And I am a big sports fan. And so then it's like Saturday. So it's like, oh, well, I've got my Saturday sports. Well, I'm with those friends. And so I'm going to have some drinks to just celebrate and then it's Sunday. So then you're having a drink with like family or friends to just relax because it's Sunday, right? And then it's like Monday night. Maybe you had a stressful day at work, or maybe you had something great happen at work. And so you're celebrating that closed deal. And so you have a drink or two. And then like it's Tuesday and you're just trying to unwind while you're cooking dinner. And I realized like that this character in my life had literally just been a character in my life like omnipresently 7 days a week. Like I was 51, 52 years old. So basically for 35 years, from 17 to 52. And then I had this weird, unexpected break that I chose kind of by accident and woke up and realized I can actually live, and I'm largely predominantly me still, the way that I always have been, like without that character in my life. And I just now at 57, 6 years later in a couple of weeks, like I've just never like brought that character back into my story. Well, okay, maybe like once I had like a beer like 3 years ago. And then I was like, oh, wow, like a quarter of a beer now gives me a pretty good buzz. This is crazy, right? And so it's just, I say that again, not to self-aggrandize, to empathize and identify a little bit, but it's more this idea. I'm curious if you can unpack, if you've seen this kind of context of like, obviously yours was a different level and a more life-threatening, serious challenge that you dealt with. Mine was different, but could have been just as damaging. And it ties back to this kind of like hustle culture, but also just American culture, just kind of, and like you've now seen so much of it through other people that you help. I'm curious, like how you frame all this for those of us that are listening who probably live kind of like how I just described, as opposed to maybe how you and I are living now.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, for sharing that. And my head went to a couple of specific places. By the way, what I do when I go to 12-step meetings is I'm always, and it was naturally easy for me to do this in the beginning because I was so hungover and so in such bad shape physically, I couldn't really fight, right? Like I was sitting in these meetings and I wasn't sitting there like being like, oh, who are these people? What do they know? I actually was just so like out of energy.
Yeah.
I was just listening to what everybody was saying. And I kept hearing that try to figure out how you relate to someone. Because you might not be from the same socioeconomic background, the same race, gender, whatever, as someone in a random meeting. But I was like so down on my luck, so worried because that I was just like, all I was really able to do was listen to what other people were saying. And I would try to figure out how I could relate, even if like the circumstances of what people were talking about seemed different on the surface, right? So like, but like with what you were just sharing, a couple of things like came to mind, which was number one, how in the beginning you just kind of decided to tell yourself to do a 30-day experiment. And I think that that's critical for your listeners, any listener that's hearing this. In the beginning, when I was first getting sober on February 23rd, 2015, I remember asking some guys in one of the meetings after the meetings, I was like, wait, so what happens if like I ever get married or I go to weddings, I can't do the champagne toast? And they were like, why don't you just like focus on today and worry about that later? And so this notion of, because like forever seems like a long time to me.
Again, like if I had been trying to tell myself that at the time, I never would have done it.
Yeah, exactly. No, there was a huge problem for me because alcohol had been my companion, my bestie, my friend, my support, my love, the love of my life, right? Kind of, in some ways since I was 14. I still remember that first drink I had. It was Jack Black, right? And I remember when I took it, I felt like relaxed. I felt cool. I was like, and I was hanging out drinking with like my good friends, right? Like they already liked me. I didn't need to feel cool around them,
Yeah.
right? But I didn't feel, but so, but so to me, and another thing you said was just like frame it as like 30 days. Just frame it as like one day, a week, whatever, something small. And then the other thing you said is you realize that you're still you. I was so worried, right? Because for years I was like, how do I live in this world without alcohol? Because like you said, Friday night I might go out it, Saturday night I might go out it, and I had all my jokes ready. Like on Sunday, I had all my like jokes about how like, well, I'm like living in San Francisco, right? So I'm like being healthy. All these other San Francisco, Silicon Valley people are going hiking and biking
Right,
and
yeah.
going to Tahoe. Whereas I was like, why would we do that? We've like got bars right here. Why would I go like drive all the way to Tahoe to like be in nature or go like climb Mount Tam? I would like PM people stopped inviting me. So on Sundays, what I would do is I would have like my jokes ready with my drinking buddies when we're like having mimosas, and I'd be like, well, I'm having my spa day today. I'm drinking orange juice. Orange juice has vitamin C in it. And then when I would have
Wow.
like when I would have like
Because that's your
what
story. That was what,
yeah,
right?
and that was my life. And then what is that? What's that drink with like the tomato juice and vodka that you have on
Yeah,
Sundays?
yeah.
That's I forget
Yeah,
what the name
I
with
can't.
the celery, the
I've
celery
never,
stick.
yeah, I've never liked them, but I can't think of what
So
they're
I
called.
would I would
Yeah.
tell people I'm like, well, I'm drinking
Bloody
like
Mary, Bloody
Bloody
Mary.
Mary.
Yeah,
I would drink Bloody Marys and screwdrivers on Sundays, and I would like have my jokes ready. I'd be like, well, I'm having my vegetables for the week while people are
right.
coming back from like Tahoe, right? And so I was so scared to death, Rob, about how can I be an adult
Yeah,
in this world. I was like in my 30s by then, and I was like, how am I going to survive as an adult? What jokes am I going to tell? What like how am I going to like go
yeah.
out? Like what am I going to do? How am
I can feel that.
Yeah,
Like I can tell you,
yeah.
like had we again, this is the weirdest, like serendipitous good thing that came out of the pandemic, right? Like had we been in normal circumstances, I don't know that I ever make any of those choices. Or like you say, I don't know that I believe that I can make those choices. It was only like, again, just circumstantial luck that like the choice almost, once I made the experimental choice, then like the world being closed down the way that it was and so socially contorted was what almost like created the opportunity for me that maybe never would have happened.
It's hard. Yeah, who knows, right? Like there's no way to scientifically
Yeah,
study it, but thankfully it happened, right? And like, and I mean, in my opinion, right? Because I'm not like a teetotaler or whatever. I think
yeah,
that like
me either.
80, I think like 80% of the people can drink responsibly, and then, but I'm not, and I know I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
But like, I definitely think that for some of us that are prone to addiction, I think alcohol is a neurotoxin, and I think that it's poison, and I think that the further people get away from alcohol, if they have a problem with alcohol, because they've done so many brain imaging studies on this, this is a well-known scientific fact at this point. Your brain recovers, right? The longer away from drinking you get, your memory improves, your skin, like every like there's just so many like positive health benefits to not drinking. If you have a problem with drinking, that is, right. But so it's I think it's great you got 6 years in, but yeah, like I was so scared, Rob. I was like, who am I gonna be if I'm not gonna be this Mr. Jokester, charismatic, whatever guy with the liquid courage at the bars.
Right.
I was like,
and now,
who am
and
I
look
gonna
at you now, you're 10 years in. How in this 10-year, 12, whatever it is, 10, 11-year journey, like how long before you kind of really found like this Jason and went like, I kind of like this guy. I can be this guy. I can be me.
Yeah. It took, first of all, the first 30 days, I was one of those guys that like I was always having high responsibility, high cost of failure jobs in Silicon Valley because I was working in banking and brokerages and whatnot.
We said in the opening.
And so I got used to eating out for my meals. So I didn't, because I would sit with my laptop and just like crush it while I was eating dinner and like having a few drinks.
Yep.
The first 30 days from like February 23rd, 2015 until end of March 2015, I didn't go out intentionally to the bars. Okay. I was
so you pandemicked yourself, basically.
I literally was just staying where I was living in Woodland Hills. And I would just go to get my food and I would go right back home. I wouldn't sit at bars and restaurants like I usually do. But then after 30 days, I was like, okay, this is not going to work long term if I don't get out into the world and do my usual thing. Because I was like, what's wrong with me being at a bar or a restaurant and working with my laptop? Because I was already working on the Pink Cloud prototype at that point. So I did. And it only took a week for enough of the servers to rotate through to realize I didn't want my normal white wine. At that point, I was just drinking white wine because the red wine hangovers were too hard. Yep. And after 7 days of that, a month in, I was like, okay, dude, you can just go out and work at restaurants and bars and you're fine, bro. And what that taught me is the servers were not the ones. The waitresses and waiters and bartenders, they were not the ones forcing me to buy booze from them.
And in fact, as humans, they might be just as helpful to you in like respecting your choice to not have it and be like just as supportive.
They were. And actually, to give if it's okay to give a shout out to that restaurant in Woodland Hills, it's called White Hart Pub. I'd be in the back room at White Hart Pub for hours, just working by myself, working on the Pink Cloud prototype. And there was a sober bartender there that took an interest in just like, what was I working on all the time? Like in the back. And she had over 10 years sobriety at the time. And I didn't know that because I didn't know. I was just working by myself. And then she actually, right before Pink Cloud first went live in November of 2016, I worked on it for a year and a half with some people before we launched version 1. I was showing it to her. She was really complimentary. She said so many nice things. And she said, are you going to charge? And I was like, well, I'm thinking of not charging. And she's like, hey, why don't you just charge a couple bucks? Because how are you going to keep this going? Like with like the costs if you don't charge. And a couple other people had told me to charge too, but it was because she, as a sober woman with over 10 years and was like the bartender at White Hart Pub, because she said it was okay. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna charge $3.99 up front to download, right? Like download, and it worked out really well the first year. We had
in some ways she was right, like classic user. She quietly, maybe she never even said this to you, but like you and I know these stories from so many years in the tech industry with users, is like she saw something that in what you were doing that was so powerful to her that she thought secretly, like, I really want him to succeed. Like I want him to like be able to have this thing succeed in the world because I know the world needs this.
Yeah. Yeah, right? No, she actually said, I think she did say stuff like something along those lines, but you're right. Yeah. And so that gave me permission to charge because I was originally thinking of not charging.
And more importantly, back to your original point, like it gave you permission to believe that like this Jason could sit in places like this, which during that first 30 days, you saw the place as the threat and as the problem, as the virus, so to speak. And now you're in the middle and you're like, wait a minute, I can be protected against this virus. And it turns out they're not the problem. They're not the problem. Like I can make a choice. Wow.
Right.
Good
Absolutely.
for you.
And what I always think to myself is if I can't, for instance, like I was still a cigarette smoker back then. I told myself, if you can't go to the liquor store, bro, and buy cigarettes, what's wrong with your sobriety from alcohol? You're just there to buy cigarettes. Like, who cares if it's a liquor store? Like, they sell like mixers there. You could be there
sell all kinds of stuff there that you don't buy.
Yeah, you don't need to be buying the liquor. You're not there to buy liquor. And so what if liquor's there? Walk in, mind your business, get your cigarettes, and go somewhere else. Because and so there's other kind of periods in my sobriety where I had different sort of, I don't know if you'd call them like eureka moments or like transformations where I would keep, I don't like getting to like a different, better place with my recovery journey, right? Over the years. Cause I hit 11 years like this past February, and I feel like I'm always, every once in a while I make progress, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Like,
That's fine. It's life.
yeah, like so but yeah, there's definitely been a couple of other moments in the last 11 years where I'm like, oh, it's okay. Like, this is who you are. This is fine. And like, and I'll tell you, like, because it's a mutual story you might not know, but it's related to my recovery. We and Pink Cloud. Pink Cloud, we launched in November 23rd, 2016 to the Apple platform, iOS only. And it was direct to consumer. And then in July of 2022, fast forward, I was struggling with, I had a son, and I had like a kid then, and I mean, I still have him. He's 5.5 now, but I was a single dad, and I was like, I can't just keep direct to consumer. If you build it, they will come, and just be grateful that we got I love you emails. We got you saved our life emails, and people would meet me and show me the app on their phone and sometimes cry, and they were very grateful, and that was great, right? It was great.
Of course.
Lot of like beautiful moments as a human, right? But then from a business perspective and from a corporation perspective, in July 22, I was like, I have to make some hard decisions about my life, right? Because I'm the guy, I'm the founder, I'm the CEO.
Yeah.
At that point, we'd had over 100 consultants work on Pink Cloud, right? We'd paid people cash hourly. And I was like, do I want to keep doing this? And if so, how? So I got really honest with like Dave Whelan and some of our other advisors, and talked about my finances and my life. And then that's when I started down this journey of, how do I figure out how to expand Pink Cloud from its direct to consumer origins and go into B2B2C, a term I hadn't really heard of at the time, and B2B.
Okay.
And,
all right. So let me do this. Let's do this, because now we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about Pink Cloud, which is awesome. Before we do that, I want to give like one kind of setup question here about that. Like, why the name Pink Cloud? Like, what does what does that phrase mean?
Yeah. What Pink Cloud is, can I tell you the story of how I came up with the name?
Please.
So I was like 2 weeks into sobriety. This is early March 2015. My phone was not blowing up, right? Nobody was trying to call me, talk to me. I wasn't very popular with like ex-girlfriends or anything like that. I was like, nobody basically wanted to talk to me or hear from me, basically. So like, I fortunately, by the grace of God, I had like two friends in LA, right? This gay couple and one of them was an old college friend and his long-term partner. And so I had known them for years, and they fortunately were also both board certified addiction psychiatrists, just random like stroke of luck for me. Yeah. So they were very happy to hear that I was like trying to go to meetings and get sober finally. And so we were just having dinner, and they wanted to check in on me every week for dinner. And I was sitting there across from them, waving my hands in Sherman Oaks, meeting in the middle. And I was like, oh, and I'm working on this app, and it's going to help so many people. And like, it's going to help people find meetings and track their recovery, blah, 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 blah. Here are all the features. And these buddies of mine, they're just kind of sitting there digesting it. And my buddy's, my buddy's man, his husband, looks at me and he's like, Jason, you're on the Pink Cloud. And I looked at him, and I wasn't from a family of recovery or from. So
you're like, what is that? What does that mean?
I look at him. I was like, "What's the Pink Cloud?" And he said that the Pink Cloud. He's a medical doctor who'd been to over 10,000 meetings at the time himself. He said the Pink Cloud is a period in early sobriety where you feel like you can conquer the world, but really what it is you just don't have poisons in your body like you usually do. And so you're just like feeling what normal people normally feel. But it's this phase you're going through is called the Pink Cloud. And I looked at him and I was like, wait, so this is going to all end? And he's like, some people stay on the pink cloud. It's okay. And I was like really scared or nervous that this joyful feeling I was having about being alive
hypothetically might just be like a bubble.
It is going to end, right? I was so worried. And then I was driving back home to Woodland Hills, and I was like basically cussing out my buddy's husband, and I was like, "What does he even know?"
Right,
like,
right.
Blah, blah,
he doesn't know. Like, my pink cloud is different. Right?
What does he know? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Who cares? He's been to thousands of meetings, and he's helped a lot of people.
Yeah,
fear, and then as I was kind of making it to Woodland Hills, I was like, "Wait a minute, pink cloud." I don't have a name yet for this prototype app I've been working on.
Wow.
And so I know, like, before I got back, I was like, getting off the highway, turning onto the Topeka Canyon. And I was like, let me see if it's available, because you could brand around it. It's 2 words.
Right.
And I loved it because I thought that
we are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at eSudo. Running any business, but especially a law firm, means balancing a lot. And technology, frankly, shouldn't be a headache. eSudo makes information technology and cybersecurity simple for law firms large or small. With over 20 years of experience, they specialize in everything from Microsoft 365 management to advanced cybersecurity solutions. They help you to stay ahead of threats, manage your data securely, and keep your tech running smoothly so that you can focus on what matters most, your clients. eSudo understands the legal industry's unique needs, offering tailored solutions to ensure that your firm is always in compliance and always protected. Are you ready to upgrade your firm's technology or get help with your questions? Visit esudo.com.
that a problem in our community is sensitivity around stigma.
Okay.
You don't necessarily want someone to take your phone, get access to it, and see that you have an addiction problem. Some people don't want that to happen for a lot of reasons, right? They don't want their partner, friends, family to know.
Sure.
And so if you name the app with something sober something or recovery something, it outs you if someone gets access to your phone.
And then even those word choices in our culture have stigmas attached to them,
yes,
et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought if you use the expression pink cloud, it's kind of cool. Maybe we could brand around the color pink. I was convinced we'd get some designers that could like create a gender neutral pink, and
to the general public, it's a phrase that no one's going to understand. So if the partner sees it on the phone, it's like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
But oh man, like as I'm listening to you, I'm just thinking of the subtext of that though. Like in a way, back to your friend's partner at dinner that night, who's not telling you, hey, be afraid, like this pink cloud might burst for you, but also did quietly say, like, hey, for some people, they forever stay gracefully on the pink cloud. In some ways, like, this is just me projecting now into this conversation, like, pink cloud, the platform that you've built, hypothetically is, and use that word we used in the beginning, that sanctuary, right? Like that is creating that sanctuary for people that maybe we can help you to essentially extend and or strengthen and or make more sustainable your own pink cloud.
100%.
Right? Like, I mean, like, wow.
Yeah. Like for instance, right? I was like the classic use case as an individual. I wasn't from I'm one of the classic use cases, right? I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know anything about the scene, right? Like there's a scene in recovery, right? I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the words, the terms. So now one of the negative consequences of that is I didn't know there were things like sex and love anonymous meetings or gamblers anonymous. I knew there were GA meetings, right? But that wasn't my problem. I didn't know there were programs that can help you with relationship issues or broken family problems, all of these things. So like that is like a mission for Pink Cloud is in the app. You can see that, oh, maybe you do have a problem with relationships or sex or shopping or food, because like there's a way in the app to track up to 19 different problem areas, we call it. And so then that would prime the person to be like, maybe, wait a minute, could I have a shopping addiction? Could I have a gaming addiction? Why is this icon staring me at the face?
Yeah.
And like, there's the word problem at the top of the screen. So that's part of like,
if I explore that I might, this kind of is like a little breadcrumb trail that eventually may lead me to other people like me who then would be supportive of me. Ooh, that's okay. So, all right. So let's do this. Like, talk, just business guy now, business junkie conversation
sure.
for a little bit here, right? So,
yeah.
So Pink Cloud is this app platform, right? So talk to us about just here kind of a litany, and you can take them any way you want. Like kind of what's the business model?
Sure.
What is the mission?
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about like kind of how do you measure growth and like what are you going to do next? But like basic for people that are listening. So Pink Cloud is clearly, we've described, it's an app, it's a platform that is accessible, but like, and it does now in 2026, we're talking like it does what and for who and how many.
Okay, Shay, I've got to be honest, Rob. I'm not going to be able to give you the MBA answer to all those things.
That's like all good. I want to give you. I want the Jason answer.
Consulting CTO, CEO tapes.
I want the Jason answer.
Actually, this reminds me to finish the story about in July of 22 how my personal recovery journey helped and how I just got to be okay with who I am.
Yeah.
So our business model is subscription.
Okay.
So since for the first year we were in existence, we were pay to download $3.99 per install, and we did very well for that business model. Less than 2% of mobile apps ever hit 10,000 installs when you do that business model up front. We had over 6,000. So it was almost like we stumbled into like a paid beta, and we knew it's worth like continuing to pursue. And then since December 2017, it's been subscriptions, free to install. And there's no way you can get tricked into subscribing to Pink Cloud on purpose. It has something I call a hard opt-in, which means you have to read and press a button. And we don't use game mechanics to trick someone into subscribing to Pink Cloud. You get a 30-day free trial. And the reason you get a 30-day free trial, as opposed to the metrics tell us that you should only give people 7-day free trial and then you would like have better conversion. But the reason we give people a 30-day free trial is we're perfectly fine and most of the app is free. There's one tab in it, the rooms tab where the meeting finder component is. That one tab, after 30 days, you'll see a paywall. The rest of the app you could use for free to track, to take notes, track your inventory resentments, your prayers, etc. It's always free, right? But that one tab, we charge, and after 30 days of using that tab, you'll see a paywall, and then you can subscribe for like a $1 a month, right, or $10 a year, right? So it's a nominal charge. But that's our existing business model, and then. But what we're expanding into, because charging people in modern days $1 a month doesn't pay anybody's bills, right? They never have, right? I've always had to consult to support myself, right? But what we realized starting in July of 2022 was, or what I realized with the advisors, Dave Whelan and some other advisors, was I had to learn business and I had to learn healthcare, because I wasn't an MBA. And I didn't have an MBA, and I didn't go to networking events ever in my career. I didn't need to. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about healthcare. So I just drank from the fire hose and started going to every single networking event I could find out about in Los Angeles. And then what I realized by going to those networking events was, it's okay. I'm never going to be that guy. I'm never going to be that polished MBA that worked at McKinsey or Bain and knows what to say at the right time and has their elevator pitch down and all. I'm just not going to ever. I'm just going to be me. And I just realized with my recovery, I'm enough, right? 100%. I'm like, I'm not that MBA guy. I'm not Mr. Polished, whatever. But who I am is enough. Just be like yourself. And so I'm just like, I try to be fun and funny in networking events and bump into people. And sometimes you
learn. You're a bright guy. Like, I mean, just objectively, you're a bright guy, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? So like, you learn, you're a problem solver. Like, so put you in a room full of other people who are talking about things that you may not be totally conversant in, and you're going to absorb the context, the knowledge, the basics. takes. And then you're going to be able to take that and apply that to what you know, arguably better than anybody else, because what you've explained to us today is that what you've built is this, again, it's this combination, my words, of your fundamental core skills, the DNA stuff you had from you were 7, 8 years old, where you were coding and you understood software and you understood how you can make software to do things in this world. And then combine that with your unique life journey and your recovery experiences and your addiction experiences, which that's your market. That's your consumer. That's your user.
Right.
That the providers. And this is kind of another, like you said, B2B to C. So there's an end of your business where there are providers that are involved, then I assume. We're connecting providers and users, and man, like like these multi-sided marketplaces, these are tough to build, aren't they?
Listen, like if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, right? What I learned was from going to all of these events and going to all these healthcare networking events, I was very fortunate. At one of the events I was going to, that Dave Whelan was at Bioscience LA. He was the CEO of Bioscience LA at the time, and Pink Cloud was member number one. And we went to. I was at an event, and I met this gentleman by the name of Johnny Lamb, who was working at Scale Health at the time, and he said, "I think you should go to HLTH in Vegas later in the year." And it's like a big healthcare networking event. I had never heard of it. Johnny was really generous and he got us a kiosk at the Scale Health platform. And at that networking event in Vegas for a week, I wasn't standing around at the kiosk. I knew like I should walk around and learn healthcare. So I walked around the floor and asked questions of every single exhibitor to learn like all of these terms, right? Like I'd be awake for like 18 hours a day, just like anywhere I would go, like at the coffee stands, at the dinners, anyone I would bump into, I would like interrogate them in a friendly way.
Of course.
But I learned so much. And then that's when what I learned there was two things happened at HLTH Vegas 2022. I met the Mayo Clinic, and then they got in touch with me and they wanted to keep meeting because they said that they were convinced based on my poster and talking to me for 48 minutes at my kiosk randomly with this physician who's one of our country's experts on OUD, opioid use disorder. She was about to put out a book on it. Okay. So she had her secretary, her assistant, email me that night to lock up a January meeting. It was November. And so I was like, oh, the Mayo Clinic is interested. I thought the Mayo Clinic was some hospital in Rochester. I didn't even know until I Wikipedia'd it.
Then you're like, oh, the Mayo Clinic is the Mayo Clinic.
Wait a minute. Right. And then they spun up like a research group of 8 medical doctors that are some of our world's experts on different types of addictions. And then we executed a legal agreement with them where we're collaborative research agreement partners. And then they encouraged me to look into grants, and other people had too. And so they said that in our country, if you want to contract with large organizations, whether it's a health system or maybe a big Fortune 500 company, generally speaking, most organizations like that large are risk averse and they want to see proof of efficacy. Yep. And my response to all these doctors was, because I had personally read and responded to thousands of customer support emails at that point, and we'd gotten "you saved our life" emails. I was like, "You're telling me I love you
isn't enough efficacy?
My life is not And they said, "No, it's not." And I was like, I went to Stanford. I understood from a scientific perspective like what they meant, and I was I'd been involved in social science research, and I was like, okay, fine. And so then I learned that the NIH, the National Institute of Health in our country, is one of the best organizations to try to apply for a grant to. Okay. And so then that started.
That was a series of, that leads to like a series of breakthroughs that open doors that wind up becoming the funding, or how do we finance this model, was like now through grants. And you find yourself, and this is one of the things I was super fascinated by as I was researching to prepare for today, is like, you find yourself in this, my words, like just fascinating position to be making such an impact on users and connecting communities of users and partners and service providers, all much like let's just say like a purely private sector, privately capitalized app platform would. But in this, we're also essentially collecting invaluable research data, and we're creating this database of information and insight and guidance that ironically then will again be super valuable to both our partners, like the consumers, the users, the people like me going through this, but then also the partners in the organizations who are desperately trying to figure out how to better serve their patients. And what a fascinating, you never would have picked that. You wouldn't have, as you say, and frankly, most MBAs wouldn't have picked that. No one would have sat down and said oh, obviously our business path is that we get, government grants from the NIH and and we become a research partner. So to have you wind up there is such an amazing part of the story.
We'll say from a technical perspective, and because I have to assume any PinCloud customer might listen to this recording, so I really want to make one point very clear about this. I had been an apprentice Oracle database administrator early in my career. I took, when I was 20, I took a year off from Stanford to train under one of our country's most important Oracle database administrators in history. He was around with the Army when it was getting created. So I knew when I was designing and building PinCloud, a critical thing about customer data or data in general is you necessarily, when you're designing a system, have decisions to make about what data you are collecting or not. So I thought it was very important to never collect data that could put customers at risk, because they could be using the app to be getting better, but in the app there's something called inventory and resentments and notes. They're putting data in, and I'm pulling out my phone to show
Sure.
you. So sorry, that's my 5-year-old, but it's a phone, right? There's a little database on the phone where customers' data is getting persisted to disk. It's getting stored, saved on their phone. We crucially never sent ourselves that data or send ourselves that data now, ever.
Yeah, very
and
important.
So when customers delete the app, they know there's nothing I can do about it. Even if they knew me and I was friends with them and I wanted to connect their phone to my computer, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't get their data back. It's deleted forever. And we have very strong security because that's just how it goes, right?
Yeah. And as you say, that some of the data that they're sharing, which are really just thoughts and feelings, and that's data, but that's so deeply personal,
sensitive. It's and it's personal and it's sensitive.
Yeah,
and then necessarily one could get into trouble for some of their one's thoughts and feelings.
And in the word, to put my words again, to put some broader context around this wonderful thing that you're sharing with users that will listen to this, to reaffirm your commitment to them, in a world where data has gone, data gone wild, right? And there are no guardrails by companies anymore. And everybody is just kind of assumed to be abusing us and stealing from our personal information and whatnot for their own, corporate purposes. That's a huge statement and commitment by PinCloud, the company and CEO, to say hey, we deeply appreciate what you users are sharing into the tool, and we are going to protect you while we continue to do macro research and things to try to help you. We're going to also very much so protect you. I love that.
And the reason for that, right, is a reason for that is I knew from having grown up a techie my whole life, if there's what's called a change in control of ownership of a company, I wanted to protect customers from myself too. What if someone made me an offer I couldn't refuse and I sold PinCloud? I have no control at that point over what happens to my former customers' data. So the way to protect my customers from me ever selling is just don't collect the data in the first place, so no one can ever buy it during a change in control. That was on purpose. And then, so I was on purpose, right? And then what I learned though, because I made that decision, was governments appreciated that, right? And then the Mayo Clinic, when I met with them and I told them about all the kinds of data we have, they told us that no one in the world has our data. They would know, right? They're the Mayo Clinic.
Right.
But they don't get our data either, even though they're our partners, right? Now, I mean, what do our research partners get, right? Like, because we are grant funded by our country, by the United States of America, through the National Institute of Health, by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. That's our agency, the NIDA. So NIDA funded us, and the Loyola Marymount University is our academic delivery partner. So, of course, Loyola Marymount University, the researchers there do get to access data on a study that we are currently doing. But crucially, even our Loyola Marymount University research partners, they're very, very, I'm very close with them. Some of the academics on the team would love to see data that I don't let them see, right?
Sure.
They would, right? But they don't. It's need to know access. They don't need to know, so they don't get to see some of the data, right? So that's the crucial thing, is that at a macro level, our research partners can see the data that they need to see in order to do their jobs, which is to run an RCT, a trial, and they get to see that data. They don't get to see all of our customer data, right? Nobody does except me, actually, right? And I'm not looking at it. I don't have the time, and what's the point? And I don't get to see what customers are putting into their cell phone for their notes and prayers and whatnot, because we don't ever send ourselves that data anyway.
Right.
But at a macro level, yes, we are partnering now with different kinds of organizations, and each of them will get their own what's called ACL, access control level, and they'll get to see some data for their if they're working with us. For instance, public safety is a great example. We're working with public safety. And if a police department, for instance, or sheriff's department is working with us, and they get a private version of Pink Cloud for their officers for an EAP product, for instance, they'll get to see some information on a population level, but even they're not going to get to see the details about what the officers are putting into the op. So, but everyone's on a need to know access.
Incredible.
Right?
All right. So I've got two last kind of businessy questions related to Pink Cloud, and then we're going to kind of segue in towards the last part of the conversation. But so two kind of, they're big questions, but simple, actually. One, with this framework now, we kind of understand where it went from to how it got to today, kind of what it looks like and what it's doing. Fantasy Jason, hey man, if this is rolling, if this is working 5 years from now, how are you judging the growth? And I'm not even going to use the word success, because that's a cheap word. But just how will you judge the growth? Where is it that you want this to be 5 years from now, and why?
Is this one of those opportunities to make a joke about I'll be finally by a pool with my feet up and just I'll be kicking it, Rob. We live in Los Angeles, right? So many people get to kick it poolside, right?
I don't have a pool either, so it's okay.
But I in how I would measure success in 5 years is, ideally we would have integrated and partnered with various public safety organizations around the world. We're already making progress locally, and we have really good conversations starting from being in Nashville recently. Dave Whelan and I were at something called the RX Summit Nashville. It's the 15th year they were there, and there's public safety officers from 10 different states that I met that have said that they're willing to have follow-up conversations. And so I think that in 5 years, if we've created good relationships.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Plaintext Capital. Investing in Web3 and cryptocurrencies isn't about jumping on the latest trends. It's about understanding where the market is headed and why.
Plaintext Capital is a digital asset investment firm focused on long-term strategies backed by deep research, backing the best Web3 companies and protocols, and investing in the newest asset classes of the future. They believe that Web3 crypto will drive digital innovation for decades to come, creating significant value for investors. In fact, their team of highly skilled professionals work with institutions and serious individual investors who want clarity in a space full of hype and noise. So if you're looking to cut through the chaos and invest with purpose, Plaintext Capital brings a disciplined, high-conviction approach to investing. You can learn more and meet the team at plaintextcapital.com.
With public safety departments around the world, is we have some leads outside of the United States, specifically in Australia. I'll feel like we've been successful, and with that, public safety officers that I've spoken with are going to help us also make the right introductions to people, those of us, our customers that are in a carceral setting, that are trying to transition out of the carceral setting into a community setting. If we have integrated better with public safety and inside carceral settings and helping with the transitions of care, and we've made more progress with our veterans push also. Right now we're focused on public safety and veterans, and then
awesome.
moving. Yeah. If we have, like, let's say there's VISNs, right? If there's I think there's 18 VISNs maybe. If we have 10 of them in 5 years, or I'll feel good.
That's
and
awesome.
Then but so in 5 years, if we've done that, and we've closed a couple of Fortune 500 companies, and small businesses can self-serve access also.
Because through all of these institutional, organizational points of connection, we're my words, we're adding to, scooping up more individial users from different
absolutely.
communities.
That's the whole goal, is to get to individuals.
Right.
And
so the last question or second question, kind of the follow-up.
Can I say one more thing, Rob?
Please, go ahead.
If we have over 1 million active monthly users in 5 years, I'll be happy.
Okay, so
I'll want more.
Of course,
but if we have 1 million,
that's tremendous growth and helping incredible amounts of people. So from their point of view, kind of finishing point on this. Now we talked about the kind of B2B part of it, right? So from the C part of it, from the individual user who is using this as their kind of, my words, kind of recovery toolbox, what is 5 years from now? How has that, either the experience or the tools that are inside of that toolbox on the app, how has that changed? Is it basically the same, or are there features and functions and things that you're like, man, if we could add that capability over the next 5 years? Tell me a little bit about how the recovery toolbox part of the app looks for the individual user.
Thank you, Rob, for asking that question. So we have a 30 plus slide roadmap, where each slide is a set of features, right? Or a feature. There's a learning module we want to build, and some of the world's top addiction experts have said they'd create content for it, and they could get paid maybe from that. And there's provider search coming, et cetera. There's a lot, there's a lot of things. And fundamentally, from the end user's perspective, what will happen, hopefully soon, depending on if we get more resources, is during first-time user experience in healthcare, they sometimes call that intake. We call it first-time user experience in tech. What will happen is, if people want to give us some demographic information, like their age range, their gender, the sex that they're attracted to or not, what kind of town they live in, is it rural, is it a city center, is it suburban, et cetera. What we're going to be able to do, and we have the data to kind of start doing that already, is we're going to be able to customize the user experience to who the person says they are. And then we'll know, based on the data we have, that if you're between 18 and 22 and you're female and you're LGBTQIA+, or you self-identify as that, and you live in a rural area, it's maybe these 5 things that we've noticed if you do these 5 things, maybe in no particular order, maybe in a certain order, and we'll bubble up those 5 things and suggest maybe try these 5 things. And or if you're like a 45 to 55-year-old Caucasian male living in a urban environment, and you've been drinking and using these particular substances for this amount of time, it's these 5 things that we've noticed that statistically you have a high probability of success if you try these 5 things, which might be different.
That's more aspects of like personalization, some predictive guidance, and essentially like even better empowering them to use this to, stay on their pink cloud as long as possible.
Absolutely.
And find their pink cloud first of all, and then stay on it as long as possible.
Right. And there's so many providers around the world that are able and willing to help us with this, like the Mayo Clinic, like people at Intermountain Healthcare. There's a lot of providers that have dedicated their careers as medical doctors or psychologists or nurses, et cetera, that are willing to help us. And then that data feedback loop that we'll be giving the provider, clinical community, and social workers, et cetera, it'll just keep creating a feedback loop of learning. So everyone that does a specific role in this ecosystem, the de-addiction ecosystem, they'll be learning very quickly, and then they'll be able to. The idea, Rob, is that if we can help cut off addiction earlier for people that are already on the path, is one thing. I is usually like let's say. We understand the epidemiology of addiction very well, right? Usually someone tries something before they turn 18. Sometimes something happened to them, and there's also like family history, right? We could have posters where we say, did something happen to you? It's not your fault. Does anyone in your family drink or use? Have you tried something yet? Question mark. Have like a poster, right? In schools. And then have a number of people can call or a link to download the app. But the idea is, there's no reason, Rob, people need to do what I did and be like decades of their life we're just gone, and like
we've got enough information at our fingertips now, and enough technology to combine to help people. As I say oftentimes when I talk to people here on the show in LA and politics about like our homelessness crisis, right? It's like that nobody wants to hear that the real solution to that is to preemptively prevent people from being at risk of eventually potentially becoming homeless. That's the real answer to homelessness. Like what they want is like, how do we pick up the homeless person off the street, right? And I'm not mixing these topics. I'm just
they're related. Actually, they're very related.
And they are very related. That's a whole other podcast we could do. But like anecdotally, it's this idea of what I love hearing that, right? Because what you're saying is like the combination of the data that we can collect, further personalization, if approved, if participated in by the consumers, collective research by the partners, like we could literally start to act to help people avoid Jason's life choices so that they don't have to go through the 20-year journey of that. And
not to get too like into reality, right? For like, like a Friday, but I feel like I just feel like it because like we just got on this topic.
We're here.
The epidemiological outcomes of addiction are very well known. It's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 of people eventually get into recovery and like become like a better version of themselves or a happier version of themselves. 1/3 of the people keep on keeping on. Maybe they like their lives, but like in my opinion, they're having a suboptimal life. And then 1/3 of the people die. Okay,
that's it.
And it's usually that simple.
That's it.
That stark. And then and a doctor explained this to me who was trying to convince me to stop drinking. She's the one that explained this to me. She told me that I needed to roll. She's like, do you really want to roll the dice, Jason, that you're not going to end up being one of my clients while they're drinking that jumps off the side of the building and doesn't die? And you have to have like a couple $1 million in surgery and something, and you're like in a wheelchair. She told me that, and she's like, you happy, man? This life of yours, like going out all the time, you're miserable, but you got to roll the dice that you're not going to be one of the people that doesn't die.
Here's the thirds. I am trying to get you to go this path, But I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the other two paths, one is suboptimal, and you're rolling the dice in that suboptimal one because
Yes.
you're gonna likely tease this one. And if you tease that one and you don't die, you're screwed.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
mean, how
And
many?
that triggered you.
That's it. And it's like, how many divorces do you want? Like maybe,
Right, right.
like how many relationships do you want to screw up?
How many job losses,
How many
all the
jobs?
stuff.
And I will, and
Wow.
I'll end on this topic, Rob, which is that because of technology now, and because there's plenty of willing people out there to help. We're actually going to start. We're just going to start a donation campaign to see if, because we have fiscal sponsorship legally set up to where we're a Delaware C corp that's a public benefit corporation. So
I
and
noticed that in the
we don't.
research. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any investors, and so like I can legally not maximize profits because
Right.
because we can, right? But we can take donations, and we're hoping to get sponsors to build some of our roadmap. So just throwing that out there. But
Love that.
what I will say is that at the end of the day, we are in a great position because it's 2026 and because of AI and because of technology. There's no reason, Rob, for people to be dying right now of addiction anymore. Like people commit suicide while they're on some bad trip, right? And there's no reason for that. Like we don't just have to, as a society worldwide, just accept the fact that some people are just going to die and it's
Yeah.
no big deal.
I love that.
And like, yeah, let's just go to the funeral, say nice things, and be like, well, it was
We
their
don't
time.
have to accept
We
that.
don't have to. No, we don't.
Wow. That's powerful. That is powerful. All right. Last question. This is our closing segment question. So totally different vibe here. This has been so insightful. It's been amazing. Thank you for all of this. Like, I want to leave whoever's listening to this, no matter what condition they're in, whatever moment they're at in life, I want to leave them with maybe like kind of just a little bit of an actionable couple of things to think about, right? So for the listener person that's out there today who maybe is listening and feeling like their past or current mistakes have left them maybe unhireable or damaged or irredeemable, like what are the first two steps for that person to reframe those experiences in their own mind and say, like, I can do this. Like I can find my authentic self. I can be gritty. I can fight through adversity. Like what are those first two steps to that person that's listening who might today feel like, Jason sounds great. I'm glad he succeeded in his journey, but like I'm different and I'm never going to be able to succeed. So I'm not worth it. Like how do we speak the first two baby steps to that person today?
First of all, I would say, I hate to argue with you, but you're wrong. You are worth it. And no matter what you've done, whatever bad you think you've done or whatever trouble you're in or how irredeemable you are, it's just not true. That you might feel like that, and I felt like that, but I promise you there are others that have done the same stuff you've done and have gotten to the other side of it. Just hold on and like come, try to get into community, try to go to a meeting, try to meet people. You might not meet people at that meeting that help you, but like keep going. And eventually you'll meet people that have been where you are and have done worse stuff than you have and have felt more irredeemable than you maybe. And then you'll laugh about it together and you'll talk about solutions and like ways you can like navigate rebuilding your life, right? Or like getting a life. Maybe you've never had a life that you've liked and maybe you can now. But well, all I'll say is like, you're worth it. And there are other people that have experienced some of the things you're going through and they're around and they want to help you. And all you got to do is show up. That's
There you
it.
go.
Just stick with it and show up.
That's awesome. Thank you. I want to say thank you. I'm always grateful for every conversation I get to have. I frame this work that I do as a podcaster and in this particular podcast every week as like I get to do this as opposed to I have to do this. Right. I'm flawed. I'm imperfect as every human is there. And I have my days that are good and bad and all that. But I get to have these conversations. And I got to tell you, not to embarrass you, but I am particularly grateful for today's conversation.
Thank you.
The fact that you, this conversation, the word that I keep feeling in my heart right now as I listen to this ending is like, this conversation has been so generous. And so thank you for not just the generosity of your time. Obviously, we've spent a significant amount of time together now today. Thank you for that, on a practical level, but also just like, thank you for your generosity of spirit, for your generosity. All of this, like literally the business that you're building, right? It's a corporation. Yes, it's a B Corp. Like the mechanics of it, pricing, how much of all those businessy things is still, I can hear it. I can feel it so deeply rooted from a place of love. And that is not only admirable. So, thank you for that, but it's like proof in today's business climate, which is so hyper financialized and toxic in so many ways, and so broken, my words, like it is testament to just the conversation that we just had is literally proof in the pudding. It's efficacy showing that you can build stable, sustainable, meaningful, impactful businesses that create revenue, that make huge impacts, that impact the broader market, that create opportunities for partners, and still do it with a heart and a conscience and from a place of humanity. And for that, man, I just got to say, like, thank you. Cause like, I knew what I wanted us to talk about. I knew what I was curious about today, but you took me to some places and took our audience to some places today that I think we're going to be forever grateful to have had this conversation with you. So I hope you enjoyed it, frankly, as much as I did.
I did. Thank you so much, Rob. It's by the way, when I was first going to network events around LA, when I was hearing about you and seeing you once in a while, I was intimidated by you. I was like, oh my gosh, Rob, he's such like a big deal around LA. And so I'm just very grateful that I had the opportunity to be on your podcast, and I'm just like very thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate the kind words, and all I can say is is God's grace. I should be dead, and I'm not, and like I feel very, very blessed and fortunate that we get to participate in the solution to help other addicts.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing, man. Like we said in the very beginning of the show, and it's a phrase that comes from my mom when I was a kid. Like, we're literally just trying to use these conversations, and we did today to just try to leave the world a little bit better than we found it before we got here. So I'm grateful for that. All right. So before we go, how can people find Pink Cloud, like websites or social media? I think you're on Instagram. Like, if you want them to find and follow you too, like, give us all those details now so we can, and we'll put them in the show notes too, so people can click on them and file. But like, let's tell them here.
Yes, please. Thank you, Rob. So our website is gopinkcloud.com, GOPINKCLOUD, gopinkcloud.com. And then it would be wonderful. We need to start growing our Instagram. It's Pink Cloud app. So please follow Pink Cloud app, and then we are going to start hopefully getting more resources to put towards growing our Instagram presence. And then please feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. We put more resources towards posting on LinkedIn right now than anything else. So please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, and that would be wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you. And a closing shout out to our mutual buddy, Dave Whalen, who helped us make this happen. So I really appreciate it. Jason, have an awesome day and a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
And as always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was produced by our team at the Storytellers Company in Mexico City and Los Angeles. And you can always find, follow, subscribe, and share our show as found on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find your favorite podcast by searching Entrepreneurial Thinkers with Rob Ryan. You can also follow along on our various social media platforms for clips and contents at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And if you'd like to connect with me, our host, you can find me just about anywhere on social under the handle I am Rob Ryan. Thanks, and have a great day.